This is the IDP After Show.
All right, well, take us away, Jeff. Where are we starting first here? Who we got?
Well, we're going to start with the D-line and edge positions here. And so when we were looking at this data, we discovered some kind of interesting trends, especially with the D-line and edge positions. We have right around this point in the draft, at the start of the third round, we've reached this cliff, this D-line edge cliff, where most of the high safe profile players are already drafted, and managers are looking at either at pivoting to a linebacker or to try to find that one last edge player that they feel can really take their team over the edge. And the ADP right now is really suggesting that this is the spot in the draft where managers have to make that really difficult decision. And this is also the point in the draft where managers can really separate themselves from league mates by nailing that second or maybe even that third D lineman for their team that massively outperforms expectations and becomes maybe D-line 6 or higher by season's end. Prime example of this is last year with Max Crosby. In 2021, he finished as D-line 16 with 181 points. Last year, in 2022, he finished as D-lineman 1 with 272 points. I think that's the true definition of a league winner. And so for the purposes of our discussion tonight, we wanted to compare apples to apples, and we wanted to try to find who is that next Crosby-type jump. In order to do that, we had to remove the defensive tackles from our discussion because they're also into the rankings of D-line. Those players included Jeffrey Simmons, who was coming in at D-lineman 21, DeForest Buckner coming in at D-line 22, and Christian Wilkinson at D-lineman 24. These are all great players. They all have value. They're just not going to have those huge spike in stats that like an edge player has the potential to do. So also, and since these D tackles are all veterans, we can feel pretty confident in who they are and what their role is in the NFL. And so we're not expecting anything like a huge outlier from them. So with that said, Jake, we're going to jump into who we feel that this year's Mad Max might be. Our first candidate is a one Josh Allen, currently coming in at D-lineman 20. He's the 17th edge player taken off the board and the 26th overall. In 2022, he was the D-lineman 24 with 174 points on 894 snaps. He graded out pretty well as D-line 16. He had an overall score of 82 and 9/10. He was really good in the rushing department with 82 and 5/10, and he really created a lot of pressure with 79 and 4/10 according to his PFF grades. And so lots of dark greens and some blues there. Those were all career highs for the 4-year pro. He left a little bit desired with a tackle rate of 66 and 1/10, and his coverage was 52 and 3/10. But we're not drafting these guys for their coverage skills, so their job is to attack the quarterback. And he did that with racking up 52 tackles, 18 quarterback hurries and hits, and then 6 sacks. What's interesting when looking at Josh Allen's season, he started the season off with 3 sacks in the first 4 games, but he didn't record another sack until week 14. And then in the last 4 games, he recorded 3 sacks in the last 4 games. So kind of like bookend seasons for him. And I think that has a lot to do with the Jaguars coaching staff trying to figure out how to best use Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. In the final 5 games, Josh Allen started 4 games at the left outside linebacker position, and he produced some of his best stats of the season. Coincidentally, Trayvon Walker started 5 games at the right side outside, and he produced some of his best games of the season. And I have to believe if I have access to this data and can figure this stuff out, that the Jacksonville defensive coordinators are probably going to be able to do the same kind of thing. So I feel there's a lot of optimism heading into 2023 for the team from Duval. So, Jake, what are your thoughts on Mr. Josh Allen?
First of all, I think you just need to go coach for Jacksonville. I don't know, man. You might be ahead of them. That's all. I'm just saying it's a possibility. But no, with that said, yeah, I mean, I think you hit a lot of great points there. For me, I love seeing his pass rush pressure rate. So, right, how many times is he generating a pressure every time he's getting a pass rush opportunity? Not his best number to date this year. Last year at 12.6%. He had 14.28 is actually his rookie year. But this is something where he's kept it up above that 10% line, which is kind of that baseline minimum for someone where I want to see that they're going to be able to take that next step and really take that kind of leap into a higher level of sack production, which we love to see. I think you nailed it really well with his tackles as well too. The last 2 years we've seen that tackle floor sit very nicely for him and consistently with that, which is not something we always see from edge rushers. So having that gives you that kind of safety week to week. The one thing I really, really love is that there's only one game last year where he didn't even generate at least one pressure, and only 6 games where he didn't collect a quarterback hit. And there was multiple games where he had 3, 4, 5, even I think 6 quarterback hits in one game. Upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 pressures in one game. So he clearly is able to reach some of those elite types of production. It's now, can he consistently do that through an entire season to give us that absolute high ceiling that we're hoping to see from him. And I really think the legit running mate in Travon Walker is who's also improving in his own right, coming into year 2, someone that was definitely a project type player, I think is only going to help raise Josh Allen up even higher. And doing all that at age 26 as well, right? He's going into his 5th year, and he's only 26 years old. So I think all signs are pointing up for him at this time. Then moving into someone who, maybe the signs have not been as pointing as high up with Chase Young. I know a lot of the talk in the IDP community has been, or should we get out on Chase Young? Are we completely done with him? He's someone that when I look at what he's done analytically for me, he's definitely underwhelmed, right? He's only hit that 10% threshold for pass rush pressure rate once. It was this last season. He's played a very limited amount of snaps, so due to injuries through his first 3 years, which I think is probably where most people hang their hats on terms of their concerns with Chase Young. I will say that, his 8 career sacks is a bit below expected production in terms of that. So there is a little bit of upside left over. They didn't pick up his 5th year option. So you can, if you want to buy into the contract year narrative, there is there. But he is also the youngest guy on the list here that we're going to talk about between this grouping at 24.2. So, and the thing that we saw last year with the Philadelphia Eagles, you can end up with guys, 3, 4 guys with 10 plus sacks on your team when you play with one of the strongest defensive fronts in the NFL. And Chase Young has some running mates that can definitely help make that case. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Montez Sweat. So he's got some potential. He's got some big question marks. Really, it'll be where does everyone kind of come out on him. So with that said, Jeff, what are you thinking about Chase Young?
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there, Jake, too. And I just feel that with Chase Young, he's kind of right now, he's got that injury label. It's been very warranted. And so when we look at him, he's coming off the board right now as the 36th overall player, which it seems kind of steep for a player who has not finished a season in a couple of seasons. So last year he only played 114 snaps, like you said. So it's kind of a hard barometer to kind of judge how effective he really was on those snaps. So he did have a pretty decent overall defensive grade with a 78.4. He is getting some rush defense with 73 and 9/10, and his pressure and tackle rates are probably the lowest. But again, it's kind of such a small sample size; it's hard to be definitive on this. If this is really the Chase Young that we are going to get, or if we're ever really going to get to see the Chase Young that went number 2 overall in 2020. So, with that said, he's a very motivated player this year. He didn't get the 5th year option. There was all the trade rumors and things like that. So, if he needed locker room material to be motivated for a season, this would probably be the one. So, moving on to our last player in this position is Za'Darius Smith. He's coming off at the board right now as D lineman 25, edge player 19, and the 45th overall player taken. Last year in 2022, he finished as the D lineman 21 with 177 points on 771 snaps. He graded out as the D lineman 20, very, very effective in overall grade with 82 and 2/10. He had an awesome job doing with the pressure rate as 84 and 7/10. He actually finished 12th overall in that position grouping. Again, his tackle rate and his coverage were down, much like all these guys are with just the effectiveness. But again, we're not drafting them for their coverage skills. I think the move from Minnesota to Cleveland was more of a salary dump than anything else. His contract was like $14 million with bonuses, and so Minnesota really only gained like a 4th, and they flipped a 5th. So it's not a huge haul for a player who's still as dominant as he is. Minnesota is just kind of like appears to be waving the white flag this season. They're just kind of Dalvin Cook goes, Za'Darius Smith. They're just trying to figure out where they are as a team. So playing opposite Myles Garrett is not going to be a bad thing for him. There's going to be a lot of attention drawn to him and things like that. So it's only going to help him be more ultra productive. The last thing I have to say about Za'Darius Smith is the camp reports for training camp so far have been glowing for him and his leadership, just being a really vocal leader. There was a report last week about Malik Jackson kind of calling out Myles Garrett about being not very outspoken and not being a vocal leader. And I don't think that's who Myles Garrett is. He's just more like show up and do the work kind of thing. But maybe the coaching staff in Cleveland wanted that vocal leader, and Za'Darius Smith is definitely that's who he is. So he's going to come in. He's going to be that loud in your face kind of guy, and that may help things in the whole defensive unit being taking the pressure off Myles Garrett to not be that guy. So. Jake, what do you think about Mr. Smith?
What I love about Smith is he kind of had an interesting career path. In 2019, he played for a little team by the Green Bay Packers, if you're familiar with them, Jeff. He had a 17.67 pass rush pressure rate, which is just absolutely bonkers, right? He went off that year, and rightfully so. He was amazing. We saw some of that dip down, 9.64%. Then he was injured. But now this last year, playing with Minnesota and Danielle Hunter as a running mate, he jumped right back up to some of those elite numbers at 15.15%. You look at what he's done over his career. He's got 65 career sacks. Based on pressure rate and such, you expect about 60. So it's not something where, what he's doing is at some hyper efficient or crazy level. It's right in line with where we'd like to see it, maybe a little bit better. Like you talked about, playing alongside Myles Garrett should help keep things stable for him in that sense. He's not going to get singled out in defensive or offensive schemes. The one thing, that's kind of working against him, he is coming into, his age 31 season here. But still, over the last 4 years, they are his best 3 seasons that he's put together in the NFL. So I think that he's still producing even at this age this stage in his career. So with that said, that leads us to who we want to keep, who we want to trade, and who we want to cut. So for me, it was a little bit of an exercise. I will say the cut was easy for me. It was Chase Young. I just look at the production that even when he had 400 plus snaps in his rookie year, he still just didn't put up some of those thresholds that I kind of like to see to give me positive feelings or vibes that he's trending the right way. So that was an easy cut for me. When it came to then who to keep here, for me, it ended up being Josh Allen. And I think primarily it comes with, I really like his tackle floor, and I really like where he's at age-wise, right? So I know we're talking a little bit, you're talking about, hey, how can we get to that kind of Max Crosby, the maximum level, right? Take that next jump. Allen probably is not as likely as Za'Darius Smith to have that year this year. But when we look at, what's some longer term value as well, I kind of factored that in a little bit in my mind. I really like where Josh Allen is trending and what they have there brewing in Jacksonville. So ultimately that leaves Za'Darius as my trade candidate because he still puts up elite numbers. People are still going to be looking to add that to their team, probably in some contending sense type of roster build. So what about you?
Very similar. I have Chase Young as my cut. People were drafting him in the top 36, and he's never once finished in the top 36 as a defensive player. And I just think that's as a manager of a team, that's just setting yourself up for failure if you're drafting a player higher than he's ever finished. So Chase Young was the easy cut for me. And then as I was looking at this, I was looking at it kind of through two lenses. Is it through a dynasty or best ball redraft? And looking at it through a best ball redraft lens, I'm looking for that high upside. And so I took Za'Darius Smith as my keep. I think the discount that we're getting him at, he's coming in like at overall draft pick 45, which is almost near the end of the fourth, beginning of the fifth. So I'm getting almost a full 2-round discount on Za'Darius Smith versus Josh Allen or Chase Young's pick. So I just think that the value is there for Za'Darius Smith this year, and I think his upside is higher than anyone in this area right now. So I'm keeping Za'Darius, I'm trading Josh Allen, and I'm cutting Chase Young.
This was the IDP After Show.